Okay, so my name is Nicolas Nova. I work at the Near Future Laboratory at the Geneva University of Art and Design. The Near Future Laboratory is both a creative collective of people and a consultancy. So this means is that we both work for clients working in design or futures related projects for companies such as Nokia, BBVA, Orange, and also work on our own projects, self-funded projects on different topics related with digital technologies and the near future, 3 to 5 years approximately. So my practice and my research is about studying how people use technologies. I have a background in cognitive sciences and human-computer interaction, and this means that my interest is in understanding the usage of technology to help designers create original, meaningful, curious applications. So what I do when it comes to technologies is to study people when they're using location-based services, robots, networked objects, and sometimes brain-computer interfaces. So the ethnographic perspective in that regards consists in observing how people use those brain-computer interfaces, such as headsets that can help people control video games or applications, to understand how people make sense of that technology, or understand how they do not make sense of that technology, which is obviously complicated. And to try to understand the relationship between the technological potential and how people can use it in a way that is not too difficult for them. My motivation stemmed from my interest in understanding how people generate their own culture by using technology. Most of the time when there's a new technology, it's used in a different way than what it was planned for. So, and my motivation is mostly sociological or ethnographical about that. It means that I'm interested in how people repurpose or change the way technology can be useful for them. And what I want to do with that understanding is to try to influence the trajectory of technology by helping designers and engineers adopt a different perspective on how their technological progress can be reshaped in a way that is a bit more relevant for users than what they have in mind.
So when it comes to brain-machine interfaces then, could you give some example how to perform an ethnographic study on that? So
with brain-machine interfaces like Mindwave headset. Mindwave is a product that exists already. So instead of getting into a lab with very complex technology and observing how people use it, we rather go to, my students' place, for instance, and my students are using this kind of technology, and I would spend some time with them observing how they play certain games using that headset, or how they might project some meaning into the system, how they talk about it, how they understand how it works or not. And based on both observation and interviews, the data we generate are analyzed in a way that we either make some recommendation about what can be done out of that, or those data can serve to understand the culture that is generated by this kind of technology, and how this might pave the way for the future, and what kind of opportunity we can have in the future about that. So when I do this kind of observation, the sort of discovery we can get to with users is that the users realize that it's not as direct or as simple as it's sold on the box when they buy it on Amazon, for instance. They realize that this notion of a direct pathway between their brain and a computer, it's not exactly like that. It's something much more complicated that they have to be trained for. So that's one thing, the gap between what has been sold and the reality. And the second thing that is very interesting is that most of the people think that brain-computer interfaces, it's something that you just sit on your chair and you use your brain to control something on the screen. But if you spend time with people using it, you will realize that it's not exactly like that. They will gesticulate, they will try to do things like this, simply because they don't know how to use it, especially at first when they have the headset and they've been told to do something by thinking about it. And it's something really hard for users to do because our cognition is embodied in our whole body. So we tend to use our hands or even our body to do something that we can, well, we think that it might be helpful in the game, for instance. And what I'm interested in when it comes to transferring those research results to design is to think about this not as an impediment, not as a problem for brain-computer interfaces, but as a starting point to create something that can combine gesture-based technologies like accelerometers you can wear on the body and a headset to combine those two sources of information to have the user do something on the screen. And from a creative perspective, from a design perspective, that's very interesting. So when we think about those technologies, there are really two different versions. There's the products that we have today, which are very basic and kind of limited, and on the other hand you have like invasive technologies where you can put electrodes in your skull, which can be used for people with disabilities, and that is much more robust and interesting to create applications which are meaningful to people. But the problem we will encounter is that we do not necessarily all want to have something in our brain. So we might see with different generations is that there would be a regulation or there would be some motivation on the part of people to have this. And it's going to take a lot of time before that kind of technology might be applied in consumer products. That being said, we never know. But that's something that I foresee in the future, and that might lead to a much more important potential, but with certain drawbacks, like it's invasive, it can, depending on the activity we captured, it might scare people off because there are a lot of, it's not necessarily true, but there's a lot of anxiousness from certain users. They fear that their privacy might be intruded, that their thoughts might be collected. I don't necessarily buy that kind of argument because technology cannot do that at this stage and not in the next 20 years. But the fear people have regarding that risks is important and should be taken into account when we design those things. And that's also another problem that I foresee. There will be big debates about that, and depending on the places where those research happen, some countries might have that debate and some others will not have that debate. So we will see different, like stem cells, like debates about stem cells. We will see different forms of evolution of that technology depending on where research is being conducted.